Have you ever stared at your to-do list for an hour and done nothing? Ever opened your laptop, full of ambition, only to feel your brain hit a wall? Again? You're not lazy. You're not broken. But something inside you is, quietly, slowly, short-circuiting your focus every single day. And chances are, it's not your mindset. It's what you're eating. Now picture this. You sit down to work. Your goals are clear, but within minutes, you're distracted. Scrolling, daydreaming, foggy, irritable. You tell yourself to try harder, to get serious. But what if the real problem started with your breakfast? See, your brain isn't powered by motivation. It's powered by chemistry, neurotransmitters, blood flow, electrical activity. And food is the on switch or the off switch to every one of those systems. So here's the truth most people miss. There's one food that destroys your focus without making a sound. No headache, no stomach ache, no immediate crash. It just dulls you, quietly, relentlessly, day after day. Refined sugar, not the kind in a piece of fruit. I'm talking about the processed, concentrated, refined sugar hiding in your cereal, your granola bar, your favorite drink. When you eat it, your blood sugar spikes. Fast. That gives you a brief high, a false sense of energy. But what goes up crashes down. And when it crashes, your brain suffers first. Why? Because sugar floods your system with glucose faster than your neurons can regulate. That throws off dopamine and acetylcholine, two key chemicals for focus and drive. It inflames neural tissue, slows down electrical signaling. Over time, it even shrinks the parts of your brain responsible for executive function. It's like pouring syrup into your computer. So if you've ever wondered why your focus disappears after eating, even when you fuel up in the morning, it might not be you. It might be your biology trying to adapt to a storm it didn't ask for. But here's the good news. There's another food that does the opposite. A food that sharpens you, grounds you, locks you in, and it doesn't come in a fancy nootropic pill. It doesn't need marketing hype. It's a simple combination of healthy fats and clean proteins. Think pastured eggs, wild-caught salmon, walnuts, avocados. These foods are rich in choline and omega-3s, nutrients that build your brain's actual structure. They strengthen the myelin sheath around your neurons, improving signal speed. They enhance acetylcholine production, the neurotransmitter of focus, learning, and memory. Your brain is like a race car, but if you're fueling it with soda instead of high-octane fuel, don't be surprised when it sputters. Let me paint you a picture. You wake up, you eat a pastry and down a sugary coffee. For a while, you feel okay. But an hour later, your focus drops. You procrastinate. You snap at someone. You don't know why. So you blame your mood, your willpower. But really, your brain just ran out of fuel and was flooded with sludge instead. Now imagine this instead. You start your day with a couple of boiled eggs, maybe a few walnuts, a small piece of avocado, water, clean, calm, no sugar spike. Your brain switches on, not with a bang, but with a hum. A steady current. You feel clarity instead of chaos. You act instead of overthinking. That's not magic. That's molecular biology. And if you do this consistently, replace sugar with brain-building fats and proteins, your baseline changes. Your attention span lengthens. Your mood stabilizes. You stop losing hours to distraction. You start moving your life forward on purpose. So what do you actually do? One of the most powerful truths in neuroscience is this. What you put into your body is shaping your brain moment to moment. It's not just about calories or carbs or clean eating. It's about chemistry. And when we talk about the brain, your focus, your alertness, your ability to lock in and perform under pressure, food becomes far more than fuel. It becomes instruction. You're giving your brain a script, and there's one food that keeps writing the same terrible lines. It's not labeled dangerous. In fact, it hides in plain sight. It's sweet. It's everywhere. And it's quietly dismantling your ability to focus one bite at a time. Refined sugar. That's the villain. And this isn't some cliché anti-sugar crusade. This is about what sugar does to the neural circuits responsible for your attention, your mood regulation, and your ability to stay present. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's involved in planning, decision-making, and focus, gets flooded with dopamine after sugar intake. Initially, this might feel good. You get a short boost, a slight elevation in mood, maybe even some temporary energy. But that's exactly where the trap is laid. Because what follows is a crash, a significant drop in dopamine, glucose instability, and impaired synaptic transmission. Your brain's ability to filter distractions and prioritize tasks declines. Suddenly, that clarity you had dissolves. You feel agitated, foggy, and disconnected. The sweet rush becomes a cognitive ambush, but it gets deeper. When sugar is consumed regularly in significant quantities, it actually changes the density and function of dopamine receptors. This means your baseline motivation and alertness begin to flatten. You need more stimulation to feel the same effects. This creates a neurochemical loop. Consume sugar, feel alert, crash, crave again. Meanwhile, your brain's executive function, its capacity to resist impulses, ignore distractions, and execute deep work, deteriorates. You're not just dealing with fatigue, you're dealing with a neurobiological hijacking. And here's where it becomes even more critical. Over time, this chronic elevation and depletion of dopamine, triggered by refined sugar, begins to rewire the very architecture of your brain's reward system. The nucleus accumbens, the region deeply involved in motivation and reinforcement, becomes hypersensitive to immediate rewards and less responsive to sustained effort. That's why tasks requiring long-term focus, studying, building something meaningful, engaging in deep thinking, feel harder and less rewarding. Your brain has essentially been conditioned to chase short spikes of stimulation rather than steady, productive engagement. But sugar doesn't just impact dopamine. It also causes significant fluctuations in insulin, which leads to energy crashes. When we talk about peak focus, about entering that elusive mental state where time seems to vanish and your mind is laser-locked on the task, it's easy to assume that achieving it requires some massive overhaul of your life. But the truth, grounded in hard neuroscience, is this. Often it's not about doing more, it's about removing the interference. And the most consistent, natural way to sharpen your focus is not found in some new supplement or productivity hack. It's found in one food. A food that doesn't just sustain your energy, it activates the biological mechanisms responsible for alertness, sustained attention, and even neuroplasticity. That food is eggs. Yes, something so common, so unassuming, that most people overlook it entirely when talking about brain optimization. But science doesn't overlook it, because eggs, particularly the yolks, contain a compound called choline, which is a precursor to acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most directly involved in attention and learning. Acetylcholine is like the brain's precision lens. It doesn't just wake you up. It narrows your focus. It signals to your neural networks. This is important. Lock in. And choline is essential in the synthesis of that chemical. Without it, your capacity to sustain attention, encode information, and remain mentally agile is diminished. And yet, most people don't even know they're deficient. In fact, data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey shows that a majority of adults in the U.S. do not meet the recommended intake for choline, which means most people are walking around, day after day, trying to power through distraction, fatigue, and cognitive slumps, not because of some internal flaw, but because their brains simply don't have the chemical tools to do the job. Eggs are also packed with high-quality protein, which stabilizes blood sugar and prevents the crashes that hijack your focus. Unlike refined carbs that flood your system and then abandon it just as fast, eggs release energy gradually. They sustain your glucose levels, fueling your brain over time rather than flooding it all at once. And then there's the role of B vitamins, especially B12, another critical component found in eggs. B vitamins play an essential role in myelin formation. Myelin is the insulating sheath that allows electrical signals in your brain to travel faster. Think of it like upgrading your brain's internet connection. Thoughts don't just become clearer, they arrive faster. But perhaps the most underappreciated reason eggs enhance focus lies in their ability to support neuroplasticity. The brain's ability to change and adapt, to wire and rewire itself, is not just a matter of mental effort, it's a matter of raw material. Choline, DHA, B vitamins, all present in eggs, are fundamental to building and maintaining the flexible architecture of a high-performing brain. You're not just supporting your current state, you're upgrading your future capacity. Let's step into a real-world moment. Imagine waking up, your to-do list already tugging at your brain. You're tempted to reach for something quick, a muffin, a cereal bar, some coffee and sugar. 10 minutes later, you're buzzing. 30 minutes later, you're spiraling, mentally, emotionally, physically drained. Now contrast that with a morning where you eat 2 whole eggs, cooked in olive oil, maybe with greens or avocado. Your body absorbs the protein, the choline, the fats. Your insulin response is stable. Your dopamine curve flattens in the best way, not blunted but balanced. Acetylcholine levels rise. Now you sit down to work. The task that felt overwhelming? Now it feels manageable. You're anchored. You're immersed. You stay there longer. You remember more. You bounce back quicker from distraction. That's not placebo. That's biology. That's chemistry at work. Simple, powerful, consistent. And what makes this shift so impactful is how it compounds. Eat that breakfast every morning for a week, and the scaffolding of your cognition begins to change. Not just your ability to focus, but your ability to return to focus, to regulate your impulses, to stay calm in the face of interruption. Your brain starts anticipating stability. Your hormones follow suit, and over time, what once felt like a grind becomes flow. Because the neural substrates of attention, the circuits in your prefrontal cortex, basal forebrain, and anterior cingulate cortex, begin operating more efficiently. You've removed the interference. You've provided the inputs. You've done the work that the brain recognizes as sustainable. And that's the key. Focus isn't just a mindset. It's a state built by molecules. You are what you repeatedly signal to your brain. And eggs, nutritionally dense, biologically relevant, and evolutionarily consistent, are among the most potent signals you can send. They tell your brain you are nourished, you are supported, you are ready. Not in some abstract motivational way, but in a biochemical, repeatable, actionable way. And that's the kind of habit that doesn't just improve your mornings. It rewires your capacity for presence. And presence is the gateway to performance. When we talk about focus, we usually think of external things, less noise, fewer distractions, more time. But real focus doesn't start on the outside. It begins deep inside your nervous system. And one of the fastest ways to destroy it? Blood sugar spikes. The kind caused by a specific category of food, refined carbohydrates. Now, this isn't about villainizing food or subscribing to the latest nutrition trend. This is about understanding how your biology reacts to the inputs you give it. And one of the most potent disruptors of focus is something millions of people eat first thing in the morning: processed sugar. Imagine this. You wake up and eat a bowl of sweetened cereal, a bagel with jam, maybe a muffin and coffee with sugar. It feels comforting, even energizing, for about 15 minutes. That sugar rush feels like momentum. But inside your body, something very different is happening. Your glucose levels spike dramatically. Insulin floods your system to manage it. Your brain gets flooded with energy, and then comes the crash, and it's not subtle. You go from alert to foggy, from calm to jittery. Your brain, which depends on stable glucose to fuel its neurons, suddenly finds itself in a metabolic roller coaster. And just like that, your ability to sustain attention, to resist distractions, to think clearly, all of it starts to fall apart. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just trying to operate a high-performance machine with unstable fuel. Now here's the neuroscience. Your brain consumes more glucose than any other organ in your body. It's responsible for over 20% of your total energy expenditure, even when you're at rest. That energy supports everything from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for attention and planning, to your hippocampus, where memory is formed. And what these areas need more than anything else is consistency. A steady, slow release of glucose. Not spikes, not crashes, just balance. But foods rich in refined sugars and processed carbohydrates do the exact opposite. They act like a sledgehammer to your metabolic rhythm. They create a short-term high that's almost always followed by a sharp drop, not just in blood sugar, but in mood, focus, and energy. When your glucose drops quickly, it signals a stress response. Your adrenal glands start pumping out cortisol. Your heart rate goes up. Your thinking becomes reactive. Instead of working from your prefrontal cortex, your command center, you start operating from your amygdala, your fear and survival system. This is not the brain state you want when you're trying to do deep work, hold attention, or stay calm under pressure. And yet, millions of people are starting their day exactly this way, not realizing that their brain fog, their irritability, their short attention span isn't a mystery. It's a metabolic consequence. It's easy to overlook how quickly this kind of disruption compounds. You spike, you crash, you reach for more sugar, and suddenly your entire day becomes a cycle of self-regulation, not thriving, just coping. And this goes beyond mood or energy. There's a direct link between high glycemic foods and inflammation. And inflammation, especially in the brain, impairs neurotransmitter function. It slows down communication between neurons. It reduces dopamine sensitivity. It makes everything harder, not because your tasks are harder, but because your brain is dragging a biochemical weight behind it. Let's take this even further. Chronic consumption of high-sugar foods can actually dull your brain's ability to respond to glucose efficiently. This is known as insulin resistance. And when this happens in the brain, a condition called type 3 diabetes by some researchers, it's linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. So the cost of these spikes isn't just in-the-moment distraction. It's long-term cognitive decline. And the tragedy is, most people don't see it coming. Because it feels normal. The mid-morning crash, the need for a nap after lunch, the constant desire to snack. It's not normal. It's a signal. And it's telling you something important. Your brain is asking for help. But here's the good news. You can reverse this. Not with some drastic, unrealistic diet, but by making a few consistent, biologically informed changes. When you remove refined sugar from your breakfast, for example, and replace it with protein and healthy fats, your brain doesn't just stabilize, it upgrades. Your energy curve smooths out. Your dopamine curve normalizes. Your ability to stay on task improves. Not because of willpower, but because your neurotransmitters are operating in harmony. When you fuel your brain with what it actually needs, amino acids for dopamine, omega-3s for synaptic health, micronutrients for mitochondrial function, you stop battling your biology and start aligning with it. And that's where real, lasting focus comes from. Not a temporary trick, not a hack, but a metabolic foundation that's designed for the way your brain actually works. You remove the foods that dysregulate. You replace them with foods that stabilize. You stop letting sugar call the shots, and instead give your brain the tools it was built to use. And over time, this isn't just about improving your focus. It's about changing the baseline of how you feel, think, and act every single day. Because when you stabilize your physiology, you unlock your psychology. And in a world full of distraction, that might be the most powerful shift you can make. There's a food that doesn't just nourish, it activates. It doesn't spike your system, it stabilizes it. It's not exotic or hidden or exclusive. It's been available all along, often overlooked, rarely appreciated for what it truly does inside the human brain. That food is the egg. One of nature's most complete cognitive tools. Not because it tastes good or is easy to prepare, but because of what it delivers neurologically, chemically, and energetically. It's not just fuel. It's raw material for focus, attention, and drive. Let's get into why. Your brain is a demanding organ. It needs specific nutrients to function at full capacity. Not just energy, but the right building blocks: choline, DHA, B vitamins, high-quality protein. Eggs deliver all of that in one compact, bioavailable package. The most powerful among them? Choline. It's the precursor to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that plays a central role in attention, memory, and neural plasticity. You want to learn faster, focus longer, retain more. You need acetylcholine firing at optimal levels, and most people, astonishingly, are deficient in choline. They've never been told this, but the science is clear. Without enough choline, the brain struggles to make and release the very chemical that helps you lock in. Now consider this. A single egg contains about 150 milliliter of choline. Most people need 550 milligallon per day. Just 2 to 3 eggs in the morning can get you there. No pills, no powders. Just a real whole food that your neurons instantly recognize. But that's just the beginning. Eggs also provide a complete set of amino acids, essential for the synthesis of dopamine and serotonin, two neurotransmitters that regulate motivation and mood. Dopamine drives your goal-directed behavior. Serotonin stabilizes your mood. Together, they form the emotional architecture for clarity and purpose. And both require raw materials that eggs provide in abundance. And there's more. The yolk, often wrongly vilified, is a gold mine of DHA, a form of omega-3 fatty acid that is critical for maintaining the integrity of neuronal membranes. These membranes aren't just structural, they're dynamic. They determine how efficiently electrical signals travel, how rapidly neurotransmitters are released, how clearly your brain communicates with itself. DHA makes those membranes flexible, responsive, fast. It's the oil in the engine of your mind, and eggs are one of the few non-fish foods that provide it in significant amounts. This matters, especially for people who don't eat fatty fish regularly. Then we look at B vitamins, especially B12 and B6, essential for energy metabolism in the brain. Without them, you feel foggy, sluggish, distracted. With them, mitochondrial energy ramps up, synaptic transmission improves, and cognitive fatigue decreases. That sharpness you feel after a breakfast rich in eggs? That's not just satisfaction. It's cellular performance. It's your neurons getting what they need to fire on time, every time. That's the real superpower of nutrition. Not stimulation, but restoration. Let's not forget the psychological aspect. Starting your day with something that stabilizes blood sugar, fuels your neurotransmitters, and doesn't trigger inflammation creates an internal landscape that's primed for clarity. You're not chasing energy, you're anchored in it. You're not reacting to food. You're being supported by it. And that shift, subtle at first, compounds over time. 1 egg breakfast doesn't change your life, but 100? It recalibrates your baseline. It trains your nervous system toward coherence, not chaos. And yes, let's talk about habit formation. When you start your day with focus-supporting foods, your actions follow suit. You're less likely to grab sugar-laden snacks mid-morning. You're more likely to feel steady in your energy, confident in your choices. That's not willpower. That's biochemistry. And it starts with what's on your plate. There's something deeply empowering about knowing that a simple, inexpensive, and accessible food can act as a cognitive catalyst. No marketing hype, no fancy branding, just hard biology. That's why the egg deserves a second look. It's not just breakfast, it's a neurological intervention, one that works with your system, not against it. And for those worried about cholesterol or heart health, the data has evolved. For most people, dietary cholesterol does not translate into harmful blood cholesterol levels. In fact, the brain thrives on cholesterol. Every single synapse is surrounded by cholesterol-rich membranes. Hormone production depends on it. Neuroplasticity is supported by it. What matters more is the context of your entire diet. And within that context, eggs, especially when paired with fiber-rich vegetables or healthy fats, can elevate mental performance without compromise. The takeaway here is simple but profound. Focus isn't just about eliminating distractions. It's about feeding the very system that generates attention in the first place. And the egg, humble and ancient, remains one of the most neurologically aligned foods available to us. Not because it's trendy, but because it works, because it respects your biology, because it gives your brain the ingredients it's silently asking for every single day. When we think of change, real, lasting, internal transformation, we often imagine something dramatic, a radical shift, a sudden realization. But the truth is, transformation starts in the smallest of places, in what you do each morning, in the breath you take before speaking, in the food you choose before the day begins. Your brain isn't waiting for a life-changing event. It's constantly adapting, reshaping itself around the habits you build, the environments you design, and the choices you make. That's the most liberating part of all this. You're not at the mercy of your thoughts. You're not locked into anxiety, distraction, or fatigue. You're not broken. You're just out of rhythm with what your biology needs. And the moment you begin aligning with it, even with something as simple as your breath or your breakfast, you give your nervous system a new instruction. Regulate, not react. Focus, not fragment. Restore, not deplete. The foods you eat are not just calories, they're signals. Signals to your brain about what kind of state to prepare for. When you consume ultra-processed foods, high in refined sugars and inflammatory oils, you're sending your system into a state of alarm. You may not feel it immediately, but over time, your baseline changes. You normalize fog. You normalize stress. You begin to forget what calm clarity even feels like. But the inverse is also true. Eat for focus, and your system remembers. Neurons begin to fire in rhythm, neurotransmitters rebalance, inflammation decreases, your mind clears. That's not anecdote, that's neurobiology. Same with your breath. It's not just air, it's data. Every inhale and exhale is feedback to your brain and body about what state you're in. By consciously controlling your breath, even for 90 seconds a day, you're no longer riding the waves of stress. You're shaping the ocean underneath. That's how quickly the nervous system responds. That's how powerful small habits can be. The science is here. The tools are here. But what truly changes your life is not more information. It's implementation. A simple habit, repeated consistently, creates a neural groove. That groove becomes a path. That path becomes a default. And that default becomes a new identity. Not someone who's trying to focus or hoping to feel better. Someone who simply does. Who shows up. Clear, calm, driven. So take the science. Take the biology. Take the breath. Take the food. And put them to work in your life. Don't wait for anxiety to hijack your day. Don't settle for mental fog. Don't hand over your focus to distraction and chaos. Reclaim it. One meal, one breath, one moment of presence at a time. That's how change really works. Not in explosions, but in the quiet power of alignment. With your brain, with your body, with your future.